Hello everyone, Z-Manzilla here, and I just recently got a request through YouTube from a new Snapmapper asking me to go over some, sort of like advanced techniques, or not really advanced techniques, just things that that I feel new Snapmappers should know as they're learning the software. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, what's the simplest way to sort of summarize that sort of information that's sort of not advanced, but at the same time, assuming that you understand the basic way the tools work and you've done all the tutorials and stuff that are in the game itself. And so I was like, okay, why don't we group that all under things I wish I knew when I started making Snapmaps. So these are going to be just little things that I had to learn through like a combination of trial, error, and talking to other people in the SnapMap community to figure out. Let's start off with a basic one here that I didn't know when I first started, and it actually affects some of my earlier maps. I was not aware of the fact that there is a 12 AI limit. Now, what that means is at any given time, your SnapMap can only have 12 active AIs in it at all. So if you've been building some of your new maps and there's some weird things that are not happening the way you think they should happen, or things are responding weirdly, or demons aren't appearing when you think they should, or you put a bunch of demons in a room and only a few of them show up, that would be because of the 12 AI limit. Things that count as active AI. So for example, there's two ways to bring demons into the world, into your little world of Snapmaps. The two ways are what I call the solid demons, these guys right here, which you access under the demons menu. Okay, yeah, these are the solid guys. All right. And there's we'll go over the difference between the solids and the spawner demons in a minute, But first, these guys right here, I call them the solid demons. That's my nickname for them. I don't know if there's a proper name for them or whatever, but I call them solid demons. And then the other, which are available under spawners, is you have your single demon encounters, your group demons encounters, and your custom demon encounters. Generally speaking, those are your two types of demons. These solid demons, all right, when you put them in your map and don't change any settings, then what happens is they will automatically spawn up the second the map starts. These solid demons will spawn up the second the map starts. So what you can do to control the things so that you're not hitting things against that 12 AI limit, what you do if you're going to use a solid demon, first thing I do, I really wish there was a way to shut that noise off, is I go in and this setting here, show on start, set that to false. That prevents your solid demon from spawning at the beginning of the map and eating up one of those 12 AI spots. All right. You don't have to do anything special for these because by default they do not show up until you call a command to have them show up. So we're going to show the inputs. So you use this spawning counter input here, and that's what spawns whatever demon you got queued up in your in the instructions here. It spawns that demon once. Solid demons, you can program them with a little more nuance. There's a few things that solid demons can do that spawner demons cannot. The main one is if you want your demon to demonstrate a specific kind of behavior. So, for example, you have the option of doing spawn behavior for these guys. So, for the solid guys, so you can set up a solid demon, for example, that will only attack the player if they see them, will hunt the player, will stay in one spot and defend it, that sort of thing. And this is something you can do to the solid demons that you can't do to the node demons, to the spawner demons. So there you can also manipulate whether or not they can be glory killed. You can manipulate whether or not they can be staggered for a glory kill, and if they can be staggered, you can even override where the normal percentage of health would be for where the demon goes into stagger mode. You can change all that on these solid ones. You have a little more control over these solid ones. So we're going to revert. And the other thing is, okay, so you have the usual instructions that they can send, but we're going to show the inputs here. But you have a slightly wider array of other things you can do here, and so you can show them and you can hide them. So here's the thing though, if you hide one of these demons here, unlike with the ones that come from the node, if you can't hide them, you can only remove them. So for example, you can have these are really good for creating boss battles. The solid demons are better for save them for your boss battles, because you can use show and hide to do different things with them, like have them like hide and then just sort of pop up in a different spot, or hide them so that like their minions can come out and you gotta deal with the minion wave before it shows the demon again, things of that nature. You can do more with like the point of interest instructions with this one here. There are sort of in object point of interest tools you can use. Just you have a slightly wider array of options when you're working with these big solid guys here. So my advice with this is save the solid demons for if you got bosses or you've just got a specific reason that you need there to be that demon in a specific spot. Notice a couple things. When I hover him above the ground, he's got that red thing on him, and of course, red means you can't place it there. I can't. But you'll also, if you take a look at the ground there, you see that sort of glowing grid. That is the navigational mesh. That is what the demons need to be able to touch in order to move around and interact with the map. You'll notice that Custom Geo does not have a nav mesh. All right. So even though you can create a situation where demons can be standing on these things and that sort of thing, their interactivity is unreliable and unpredictable at best when they're standing on it. 90% of the time they will just stand there like a dingus. And then a few other times they'll sort of stumble in a direction where they think they see some nav mesh, but it makes their movement a little less predictable. And for your custom geo builds to work as good as they can for combat, your demons have to be touching the navigational mesh. I like to make what are called primitives, which the idea are primitives are just sort of their wall, ceiling, and floor bits that automatically have certain settings applied to them that so that I can just grab them and go as I'm building. And so the three things I have here, I have a floor, I have a roof, and I have a wall. And so when you're making these things, my advice is, first off, why would you have these separate things? Well, it's all about the permissions. So you go into the settings for these objects here. You'll see you have things like block players, block shots, show on start static, block demons, and block AI sight. These 6 switches, these 6 Boolean switches here, these true falsers, they kind of control what can and can't be done. So with your floor, you don't want it to block players. You don't want it to block demons. You don't want it to block AI sight. Now, that last one is to make it easier for the AIs to kind of see the navigation mesh that's in the floor. You don't want them to block players unless you know they're going to be completely off the ground. Okay, so if they're completely off the ground, then yeah, they should block a player, because otherwise the player will fall through and it's pointless. But for just regular floor, when you're doing the floor of the grid room, make sure that that floor does not block demons or players. One of the things you'll notice if you do let it block demons or players is there will be some performance issues with your map as the demons collide with it, and it's no fun for them. It's no fun for your player either, because it slows down the whole map. So meanwhile, I also make a roof, which is also what I end up using as my floor anyway. The roof is just the same thing as the floor, only it's got everything turned on. Everything's blocked, everything's solid, and all that fun stuff, And then my wall is everything turned on, And then as I'm going along and I'm building, I have these primitives that I can use every time I need a new type of wall or floor or platform or whatever. I can just come in here and grab one of these and adjust it to whatever size I need. So Doom uses a lot of textures from, let's take a look at some of those textures right now. Doom uses a variety of textures there's hotspot textures, which just automatically adjust to the size of your object, and they're okay, but you make them bigger and they just look weird. There's the textures that tile, and they don't change size, but they tile. And then you have the classic textures, which also tile, but they're all like set to fit on specific sizes. You'll find that all of those sizes are based in one form or another on some sort of like a hexadecimal number, usually about multiple of it's something that's a multiple of 4. what it comes down to. It's usually some sort of a multiple of 4. And so if you get used to working in sizes that are evenly divisible by 4, then you're gonna have a lot more of a good time making all of these different types of textures work for you. Now, these 3 sizes, the depth, the width, and the height, you can adjust them in, to pretty much up to 2048 each dimension. You can have up to 2048 pixel units on any of those. That's the biggest you can go. But whatever size you do, try to keep it to multiples of 4. And it makes things a whole lot easier for you because you can work with pretty much all the textures with this simple rule. And also, and we're going to exit out of here, when you go to your properties here, you set, I have the grid size set to 8 because I can work a little faster in 8, but 4, 8, and 16 are good sizes. And technically, you can set your grid size to whatever's comfortable for you. For the longest time, I worked in 5. The thing is, though, that when you're working in the grid room environments, those are set up on multiples of 16. And so if you're working in that grid size of 4, 8, or 16, you're going to find that everything you build is going to snap up better to the grid as well. So you get full use out of the fact that the grid room is a grid. You can use it for measurement, which is very handy. The other thing you want to do, this should be done by default, but if it's not, this is where I like to set it. Set your angle snap increment to 15. And that is because, 90 degrees in an angle. So you have 15, 30, 45, and then, is it 60, 75, and 90. Okay. So if you set your angles in that way, it makes it easier for you to kind of snap things again to the grid because it's an easy metric. You can change your move and turn speed from this setting, by the way, but I find that I just keep those settings right there where it's good. While you're moving around, if you hold that left trigger, this is on Xbox One, if you hold that left trigger, whatever your weapon mod button is, you will go faster. You will sprint in this mode, basically, and then you take your finger off and you go slow again. And that's going to help you out as your map gets bigger and you got to run things back and forth from your grid room and stuff. When you open up your thing for your settings here, you have the cursor pointed at nothing, and you open up and you go to settings. And what I didn't realize for the longest time, when you use the right button, the right bumper button here, if you're on console, or I'm not sure what it is on PC, but I'm pretty sure on console it's these 2 buttons right here, these left bumper and right bumper buttons that allow you to switch back and forth between the 2 sets of settings. I did not know for the longest time, and I wish I knew for the longest time, that you also have this menu right here where you can change the properties of various things. So, for example, this logic lines and nodes, you can show and hide them. So say, for example, that you're just trying to look at, you're just trying to do decals or minor just sort of set dressing, things of that nature. You can use this to hide all your logic so it's not in your way when you're trying to do that. You can show, hide, or lock your props. So any props you've laid down. If you don't want to look at them at all, you can hide them. Or if you are done placing props and now you're doing your more detailed work, you can lock them. Lock them into place. You can do the same thing with all your effects and your hazards. So, say for instance you're working in a room. Check this out. Watch this. Okay. This is something that is going to annoy the living crud out of you, depending on the kind of things you build. Okay, let's put down a fire strip. All right, now let's grab an orb. Put that over here. All right, where's that? Put that there. Okay. It is really freaking noisy right now. Just noise. It's so annoying. You're sitting here, you're trying to do some coding. You're sitting here, you're trying to put a floor just right, and just all the friggin' FX are sitting here making this noise. You just come in here and hide them. They're in the same spot. They are still there. They will be there when the map runs. But you don't have to listen to them anymore, and you don't have to look at them anymore. You can do the same thing with these blocking boxes here. That's these bad boys here. Let's say you're working exclusively on coding or something, and you need to hide these. Hey, you can hide all your blocking volumes. Say, you can hide your props and look at your blocking volumes. You can hide your blocking volumes, look at your props, whatever you need to do. Any inhibit AI conductors that you've got down, once you set them down, you can hide them. So again, you don't have to look at them. So you're trying to do something with your floors or something like that. You need to hide the AI conductors. You can do that. Same thing with your triggers. You're done setting up your triggers, hide them, or just lock them so that you don't accidentally mess with them while you're doing other stuff. So let's say you're doing something in your map and you only need to know one thing. Is this thing true or not? Is this switch on or off? Is it a 1 or a 0? Just a basic thing. You go and you set up a number that changes based on things and all this other stuff. But really, for all it's worth, man, you really just want to know, is it true or false? Booleans are your friend in this case. They are so much easier to work with because here's the thing. Let's grab our number again here. There we go. You're dealing with an integer, and then you do a thing, like you want to make it so the door only opens after you kill this specific dude. So you're tracking it with an integer or whatever, and every single time the player goes to that door, it has to test the integer to see if it's, so it's so you have to have the integer, and then you got to go over here to flow and get an integer tester. So you need an integer compare, to test the integer, and you got to do the whole thing of is it equal, not equal, and all this other stuff, and run a bunch of extra stuff off of 2 nodes, to test this thing. And all you really want to know is the door open or isn't it? Booleans got your hookup. You do not need any extra tools to test a Boolean. It tests itself. So you can have a thing here, like for example, whenever this is changed, test this Boolean. And just put test Boolean. Okay? You just plug it in, say test Boolean. And then you can, on the Boolean, what does it do if it tests true? What does it do if it tests false? Does it do a thing when it changes? Those are, for simple little things, Booleans cannot be beat. So use Booleans for that. And by the way, the other thing with these guys, obviously, I've been a little lazy here. I haven't been labeling them. Label your Booleans. And for Booleans, for example, we pretended this one was for a door. I always give them the label, for this one, I'm going to call it, is door open? And then, at the beginning of the map, it starts off as false, but a thing happens that sets it to true, and there you go. And it does all of its own, all of the testing stuff is done internally. You don't need a whole extra integer compare node to do it. So it just makes things a little bit easier. And also, Booleans interact with other nodes in very interesting ways, including with filters. So, for example, you could have a thing where, every time let's grab one of these guys here, the spawners. So, say you got so basically every single time one of these guys dies, it adds 1 to this dude, right? So say this integer 0 is like a death counter or something. So you want every time a demon is killed, it adds the integer. But maybe you only want it to add the integer if this guy, if is door open is true for whatever reason. So if you put your cursor right here on this guy right here, you'll notice the line turns yellow. And then you hold down that left trigger, that magic left trigger that keeps giving you all those extra options that I went about. You'll notice that if you press A, you have the option to add a filter. So let's go and add, there are a bunch of ways you can filter things, and I could do a whole tutorial on filters alone. So suffice to say, do some experimenting with these filters. They will save you so much time and trouble with your coding. But for now, let's look at the Boolean filter, because this is the one I wish I knew when I started using filters. Because Boolean filters are very useful, but they're also slightly confusing, and I'll explain in a second. Okay, you put your Boolean filter in there, right? Okay. Now, we got this Boolean filter called isDoorOpen. Now, you only want the demon kills to count when the door is open, for whatever reason. This is a wacky map. So you look at your Boolean filter here. You go ahead and you edit it, and you'll see negate and Boolean. And you can either set the Boolean itself to false or true. Why would this be here? I couldn't figure it out either, and I thought Boolean filters was the most useless thing until I realized magic left trigger. So you go to that Boolean false, you hold down the magic left trigger and swap variable constant for isDoorOpen. Here's where it gets confusing. You'll notice there's an option up here called negate. Negate is currently set to false. If negate is set to false, it means the filter works when it's true. If negate is set to true, it means the filter works when it's false. You can figure it out from the context, but it's still kind of annoying. But once you know that little secret that for the Boolean filter, pick the opposite of what you mean, hold the left trigger to put the actual Boolean that you want in there, and next thing you know, you've got nice tight code that can be very dynamic and do lots of great things because your filters are doing all the work, and instead of you having to do a bunch of extra coding and comparing and testing things. So you can just do it all off of Booleans. It's really useful. When you're doing custom geo builds, sometimes it's good to just kind of have a sense of scale as you're building. Because if you're not looking at little dudes, you're not really sure what it is, if what you're building is the right size or not. I have, for example, played some maps that were very, very good, but if, you know, like the scale of the maps were just so weird, like for example, they'll make a chair that comes up to like, you're looking at it and the cushion comes up to like here. You know, like to the player's chin. And you're just sitting there and kind of going, wow, the scale is really weird. So the way that I like to do scale is you got to compare things to the guy. Now, here's your Doom guy, and of course the Doom guy is the same size that you are. Like, you know, you look at Doom guy straight on, you're eye level with him, and that's because you are the same height as Doom guy. You know, obviously. You know, so. But, you know, here's the thing, it doesn't really help you out when you're in the editor. And so say, for example, you're building like kind of a cool structure here that you want Doom Guy to run across. You want to make sure Doom Guy is big enough. What a lot of folks will do is they'll bring a starting spot with them and just kind of look and go, okay, that's about where it is and stuff. Now, this is pretty cool if you're just sort of doing a basic run through to make sure, like, you know, dude is big enough to fit through the door you've built or something like that. But you'll also notice that nav mesh thing is going on that we discussed earlier. That's because the player's starting spot also has to be on nav mesh. So let's say you're building something at the top of a custom geocastle, way the heck up here. You're trying to build an office or something, and you know you don't want to have to keep going and grabbing your dude to, like, you know, kind of size things up and stop what you're doing. Well, take a look at Echo for a second. Check this out. Would you look at that? They are the exact same height. I mean, Doom Guy has a couple more inches on him, but man, you go up to him. You're about nose level with him. You're about nose level with Doom Guy. There, as soon as Doom Guy's done fooling around here, they are the exact same height. Echo has the added advantage that you can just float him up in the middle of anywhere. So what I like to do when I start building a map is I'll make an Echo and then I'll set his show on start to false. All right, and what that does is it makes it so that if I accidentally leave Echo in there, he doesn't show up during the map. So I just set show on start to false, just cause, to avoid that. And then you can take this Echo and you can just plop him wherever you want and use him for scale. And, you know, he will be the exact same size as Doom Guy in every single way. The only difference is if you got to put him down for a second to do something, the map's not going to get finicky about it like it would if you were using a player start area. You're always going to have bugs. You are always going to have bugs. Don't pretend like you never make a bug. You will always have bugs. So keep your code clean, and, you know, dealing with those bugs will be a whole lot easier for you. Well, what do you mean by clean code? What are you talking about, Zilla? Well, right now I got kind of a sloppy kind of set of code that I set up here. It doesn't matter what it does. It's just, it matters that it's there. But you'll notice it's sort of a little all over the place and, you know, kind of meh. So there's a couple ways folks like to keep their code clean and easy to read, and one of them is they'll slap all their stuff down to the ground, and, you know, that way it just and now keep in mind, by the way, that these nodes can be manipulated just like objects. So you can take your nodes and you can kind of slap them down, to the ground, you know, and that's one way a lot of folks like to keep their code clean. Personally, I don't feel like this is as readable, but it's just a me thing. You know, you got to figure out how it is you want to do it. Personally, I find it less readable, and also I just kind of like the way. I'll be honest, I kind of like the way it looks when all my code is floating around. It just kind of looks cool. I grew up in an era where floating code was like in the Lawnmower Man and stuff was just kind of the thing, and so like I try to like keep my code nice and floaty, you know, just because I can. I think it looks cool. But the point is, you know, you manipulate your nodes when you do that. Now, one thing you might have noticed, by the way, when you go to make a new node, okay, you come off of here, you do your whatever your object is, and then we'll have that one hide. Now, you'll notice, now when I go to move this guy, that node moves along with me here, and it just kind of bounces around and acts weird, you know? So what you have to do to make that stop happening is you need to grab it, and place it. and then it just stays in one spot for good. Boom. All right, now you can move this guy around, and your code node stays where it stays put, and it doesn't get lost and doesn't bop around, and it just keeps your code clean and nice and readable and convenient. You will be thankful you did if and when, and most certainly when, you have to fix a bug in your code. Snapmap has some really weird things it likes to do from time to time. It's glitchy. Just little weird glitchy things that it does from time to time. And it's going to be a little hard to replicate them here on stream or provide you with a repro. So I'll just sort of describe them and let you know how I like to fix them. So, for example, you'll be working and all of a sudden your screen just goes blank and you look around and it just keeps showing you complete gray. Okay? Relax. Calm down. At first, I'll go ahead and hit my D-pad up button that should zoom me out to this view, and sometimes that will fix it. Sometimes that will fix it, and it'll just turn out that my cursor is just way the heck over here or whatever, and if I go down here, I'll get back to my map. If that doesn't do it, if going back into this view here doesn't fix the problem, and you're still out in the middle of boondocks land or whatever, hit your B button, or whatever it is that deselects, whatever it does that deselects or opens the settings, okay? Because what that's going to do is if you have an object grabbed or anything like that, it's going to immediately drop it into the place where it was before you started moving it, rather than out in the middle of the void where it'll cause a glitch or a corruption. So it drops the object back into its original spot where it was a valid place for it to be, basically. Just basically cancels whatever it was you were just trying to do, all right? You hit the B until you see your properties, your settings screen. All right. Then you get back out of the settings screen. You save your map, exit the editor, and go back in. All right. And that will prevent any problems with the map, and mitigate any problems you might have with corruption. Another thing you want to do, again, because of possible issues with weird glitches and corruptions that are caused just by the Snapmap interface acting weird on you out of nowhere, is you do want to save often, but more importantly, you want to save as often. So as you're saving, as you're going along, as you're working, and there's one person I talked to, and I'll credit them, Void Runner, who once told me that he does this about every hour. First off, he doesn't, when you go to save your map, it asks for a title, don't give it a really long title. Just say, for instance, you're making a map called, Big Bad Booty Bum Rush, right? So, BBBB, and then you put a number at the end of it, so BBBB1, you've saved it, Don't give your map a final name until you actually go to do the final save. So, all right, so you've saved your thing, and then you're working, and then about an hour goes by, and you're like, wow, I did a lot of really great work, and I don't want to lose it. So you go in, you do a save as, and you make your save as BBBB2, and you give it a nice short name so that you don't have to spend forever typing it in, but to really make sure that you are not completely derailed by some sort of a weird bug with the interface or whatever. That's why you're doing that. But if you do have any additional questions that you feel I didn't cover here, or you want some clarification about something, definitely feel free to ask me in the comments. And as always, I do hope you choose to like and subscribe if you haven't already.